Hey, welcome to week 3. Holy cow, at the end of this week, we're halfway through the class. These 6-week classes fly by, which is a good reminder that you can't fall behind. We start reading Beer School this week. If you don't have the book, check the announcement section of the platform. I put 2 links up there. One is for an ebook that you can get immediately for $11.99. The other one is for a preview copy that'll get you almost about maybe a quarter of the way through chapter 3. You need to read chapters 1, 2, and 3 for this week, but that'll at least buy you a little time until your book comes in. So this week it's about opportunity recognition. We're going to look at opportunity recognition a little bit more in depth, and we're going to look at the Timmins model a little bit more in depth this week through the book Beer School. So lesson objectives for this week, right directly from your lesson notes. I'm going to make sure that you understand what the definition of opportunity recognition is. What are the characteristics that make an opportunity attractive? Because obviously everybody looks at opportunities and only a few people see them as being attractive. And then out of that group, there's an even smaller group of people that can make them attractive to the public. So what's the discerning factor there? And why doesn't everybody see it? And if we look at objective 4, then we start looking at the Timmins model again. In order for an opportunity to be successful, besides having the opportunity, having the team, and having the resources, there needs to be fit and balance. And we saw how that played out in Starbucks, remember? Some of those ideas, they were an opportunity, there was a team, and there was resources, but was there really fit within the organization? And then last objective is that in order for opportunity recognition to flourish in an organization, it has to be valued within the culture of that organization. And some of you probably work in places now that value new ideas and new opportunities, and some of you work in places where they don't want to change a thing. After seeing some of the case studies the last go around, I think you guys kind of know where things fall there. So let's go back at the beginning here. Opportunity recognition, this definition comes right out of your lesson notes. It comes right out of a book written by Timmins and his partner Spinelli called New Venture Creations. A good idea is nothing more than a tool. What each person does with it is very individual. Opportunities have the qualities of being attractive, durable, and timely, and are anchored in a product or service which creates or adds value for its buyer or end user. Ideas that emerge into opportunities may be edgy and disruptive. I want you to file that definition away, because as you start to think of opportunities for the OSI Corporation, you need to go back and view those opportunities through the lens of this definition. So let's look at this a little bit more in depth. This is an interesting video that you'll find in the upper left-hand corner of the platform when you log into the class. There is a short YouTube video, and it's Spin Pop. And it just exemplifies everything that we're talking about. This guy who worked for Braun, the electric toothbrush company, comes up with the idea that you could spin a lollipop like an electric toothbrush, based on his observations that Americans are lazy. So instead of spinning that pop on your own, you're going to buy an electric pop that spins. You and I can laugh at it. He sold 100 million of them before he sold the company. So I want you to go and look at that short video. It's cute, it's funny, it's 4 minutes long. But it's an example there of opportunity recognition. And we see it playing out. The Starbucks was another great example. The quotes at the bottom of this page, Howard Schultz returning to Starbucks is a bad idea. They're trying too many different ideas that don't work with a brand. They're your quotes. They're the quotes that you guys put in the discussion forum. Yet if you look at this 3-year stock trend, you will see that since the stock market crash of 2008, when all the stocks went down, Starbucks is doing the right thing. So you and I obviously don't view opportunity the same way Starbucks does, because they have it right. If we're saying, oh, that's a bad idea, guess what? We're wrong, because their stock prices, the value of their company, and their increase in sales show that they have capitalized on opportunities. So we start Brooklyn, the beer school, which is the startup of the Brooklyn Brewery Company. I think you're going to find that it's a really good read. If you have to read a textbook, this is not a bad one. You're going to be reading about 3 chapters a week till the end. So for the next 4 weeks. So I can tell, trust me, I've taught this class often enough, I can tell when you're not reading the book. If you do not read the book, you will not pass the class. So get the book. So let's take a look at what the opportunity on the surface appeared to be for the Brooklyn Brewery. East Coast location. At the time they opened up, most of the microbrews were on the West Coast. They were a microbrew, which the beer business was dominated by the big labels like Anheuser-Busch and Miller. They have very limited resources, no prior experience, and the only thing they had was a name, which they came up with early on, and an idea to affiliate their business with Brooklyn, which at the time was a decaying borough of New York. So for most of us, we would look at that and say, really? That's an opportunity? I don't get it. So this is where the whole idea of contextual intelligence comes into play. If you have looked at the beer school book at all, there's an interesting quote early on in the preface, and they credit the tie-in with Brooklyn and the idea of being a small company as some of the key factors of their success. That is an example of contextual intelligence. The quote is, "We learned that startup companies have some important advantages over large companies. The media and many other businesses are always rooting for David over Goliath. Exploring these advantages is essential to success." So they capitalized on their size. What's interesting about that is that many of you work for small companies now, and you can capitalize on your size. But keep in mind one thing, the final project for OSI, you are Goliath. So what you need to do is create a dynamic of being David. Because bigger isn't always better. Don't get lulled into thinking, oh, just because OSI has really deep pockets, that they do everything right and it's going to succeed. Because if you spend any time at all looking at the OSI history, you'll find that they've had quite a few failures. So going back to the Timmons model introduces 2 more ideas. So you have opportunity, team, and resources, but you have to include fit and balance. So once you start reading the first 3 chapters of beer school, what you're going to quickly find out is that in order, they talk about opportunity in chapter 1, team in chapter 2, resources in chapter 3. It's clear that there is not a balance between all 3. So, the questions that I want you to keep in the forefront, is it essential to have a balance? What about fit and balance in this made it work? If you answer that question, it helps you understand and better use the Timmons model. They do not have to be even, but how do you determine where that relationship should fall? So the last new piece of information that was introduced this week was the idea that in order for opportunity recognition to flourish in an organization, it has to be part of the culture. Now, what we know about the Brooklyn Brewery so far in chapters 1, 2, and 3 is that it's an entity that doesn't exist yet. But in saying that, Hindi and Potter have certain principles and beliefs. I'm going to use that OSI term. That, so are they creating a culture already between the 2 of them that anything is possible? And if so, that sort of segues into the leadership conversation that we were having last week. They are very different leaders. One of them is an entrepreneur, and the other one is a managerial leader. You can label them yourself. How important is the balance between the 2 of them as part of making this work? Because the last thing I'm going to ask you to think about as part of this whole process is leadership. So John Cotter said that leaders establish the vision for the future and set the strategy for getting there. They cause change. They motivate and inspire others to go in the right direction, and they, along with everyone else sacrifice to get there. So are we seeing early on the importance and the role and the value of leadership in the Brooklyn Brewery? How's that playing out? You need to give that some thought, because obviously if you are going to be able to recognize opportunity and act upon opportunity, be it in your OSI final project or in your working life right now, the leadership piece is essential. So some things to think about this week. We have both an assignment and a discussion forum that will explore both of these ideas further, and a great book to start reading. Please, as I reminded you when this started, don't fall behind. We'll talk to you soon.